Good morning and welcome to our conversation and presentation on stress and what it means for you. This screencast will discuss and review activities for taking care of our bodies as we deal with stress management. We are living through unprecedented times. We have just lived and are still currently living through a pandemic. So what stress looks like in our lives and in the classrooms now might look very different and might sound very different in our own heads than what it did in years prior. And so we're going to talk about how not to not have stress, but to have stress and know how to deal with it. So ask yourself, do you have any of the following? High blood pressure, racing heart, poor sleep, teeth grinding, poor digestion, headaches, neck pain, hair loss. If you answered yes to any of these, it could be a sign that you're experiencing stress. As we know, when we are stressed, our bodies try to get our attention, and that is the key. When our bodies talk to us, it is with purpose, and we need to learn how to talk back to our bodies. While we may not have control over what the stressor is, we definitely have control over how we choose to manage it and the conversations and self-talk that we have. As we all know, there are things we can do daily to help manage stress. Yoga, breathing exercises, exercise, taking a walk in nature, calling a friend. We know this. Something I did not know is that according to the American Institute of Stress, about 33% of people report feeling extreme stress. And this particular statistic was from 2019. I wonder what this percentage is like now, having lived in a pandemic. As teachers, we want everything to go in a certain way. We want the children to learn certain things in a certain timely manner. And as we know, this doesn't happen, and change is very difficult. So stress in the professional sector, obviously, we know teachers play a vital role in shaping children's lives. According to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, it is one of the most stressful occupations. And to me, that gave me some relief in telling me, no, you're not overreacting. You're not being dramatic. It is one of the most stressful occupations. So as a result, teacher burnout, disengagement can occur, affecting students, schools, and communities. And when we're affected, our students suffer. Take a minute and ask yourself, perhaps talk to the person next to you, how long have you been teaching? How long were you teaching before you felt the major effects of the stressors of the job? What was the core stressor? And how did you deal with this? A first-year teacher might have a very different conversation than a veteran teacher, and this is very interesting. So please take a moment and have a conversation with your partner. Something to think about. What is the major causes of stress in the teaching profession? After having that conversation, did you perhaps discuss job satisfaction, pressures of high-stakes testing, poor leadership, adolescent mental health, which right now is on the rise significantly? If you did talk about those things, you're definitely in the majority. You are not alone. Astoundingly, these issues and their results have cost the system in excess of $7.3 billion a year. So these feelings, these conversations, these observations put you in the majority. And this is very significant. How do we fix this? Mentoring, mindfulness, stress management programs, social and emotional learning programs for students. And this can lead to lower absenteeism, overall improved teacher health, more engagement, more positive classroom climate. And the goal is to offer those scientifically proven programs, especially in those lower socioeconomic status areas. External triggers. What triggers you? So ask yourself externally, how do you respond to these things? Major life changes, maybe a divorce, environment, unpredictable events, a death in the family, workplace stress, social. Your internal stressors, your beliefs, your fears, your uncertainty and lack of control. And as educators, we don't like that. And so we have this negative self-talk. Wonder if it's not good enough. Wonder if my students weren't engaged. Wonder if my administrator observing me didn't like what I did. So how do we manage? First, we need to start with our self-talk. According to Brené Brown, the most dangerous stories we make up are the narratives that diminish our inherent worthiness. We must reclaim the truth about our lovability, divinity, and creativity. We may not be able to control the stressor, but how we deal with it is significant. Negative self-talk can be a major stressor, as we know. We might say things to ourselves, is this lesson good enough? Am I good enough? Will my students like me? Wonder if I can't do this. Wonder if it doesn't go how it was planned and it completely tanks. This happens to us all the time. What can we say to ourselves to make our bodies understand that that's okay? How many of you have heard any of these statements in your own mind during your teaching career? So in Abria Joseph's video, he helps us become aware of how to be present and mindful in both thought and action in order to actualize dreams and live in positivity. So with your partner, go through the following steps. Step 1, as Brené Brown asks, are you hooked on a negative story as an educator? What tools or conversations helped you through this adversity? And why is this story dangerous? And again, I'm very anxious to hear that first-year teacher story and that 20th year teacher story. Take 3 minutes to converse with your peer. Okay, so this leads us to the feeling and states of awareness, ACEs. Stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and these are things such as emotional abuse, neglect, caregiver mental illness, household violence. Our students come to us with baggage. We become counselors, we become nurturers, and sometimes teaching is the last on that list. So these experiences can lead to toxic stress, which activates the stress response system and can lead to long-lasting wear and tear on the body and brain, and that can affect everyday life. How can we expect a student to come in our class and take a standardized test whenever they are witnessing household violence every day? What can we do? Professional therapy, exercise, spend time in nature, meditation. What can we do for our students? What can we do for ourselves so that we can properly address and meet those students' needs? Childhood trauma. Nadine Burke-Harris speaks beautifully about this topic and the perspective of it. She states the repeated stress of abuse, neglect, parents struggling with mental health or substance abuse has real tangible effects on the development of the brain. This unfolds across a lifetime. This impacts children for a lifetime. And those who experience the high levels of trauma are at triple risk for heart disease and lung cancer. So this goes beyond the classroom, and that is what is important to understand. So have this quick discussion. How can the effects of childhood trauma of our students trickle into our own classrooms? Okay, some good discussion here. In your journal or with your peer, I would like you to provide a response regarding Dr. Levine's approach for releasing stress from the body. Dr. Levine conducted a question-answer session, and he refers to particular case studies that he was a part of. So I am asking you to take a look at this portion of his response and what is the takeaway. So please take a minute. Okay, the core thing here is very striking about the flight response. This particular person was struggling to get away. She was overwhelmed. She wanted to get out of that, to get away from those people who were holding her down, to run out of the room and back to her parents. And again, we looked at this interview. So what happened is all of this activation, this energy that was locked into her body when she was trying to escape and then was overwhelmed, was still there. When we're overwhelmed like that, the energy just doesn't go away. It gets locked very deeply in the body. That's the key. It gets locked in the muscles. Imagine what this does to our bodies. So in order to take care of our bodies and work through these stressful situations, it's the power of attention. We are going to do a body scan, some mindfulness, some meditation. So we are going to go through these steps. Okay, slowly open your eyes. Move naturally to a comfortable sitting position. How do you feel after working our way through this mindfulness activity? The benefits of mindfulness, why do we do it? What's the point? According to positivepsychology.com, a major benefit from practicing mindfulness is facilitation of recovery. Again, we may not be able to control the stressor, but how we facilitate the recovery of it, how we mend our bodies is key. Just some interesting facts. There was a study of a young breast cancer survivor. It showed that women who practice mindfulness were more likely to experience increased self-kindness, decreased rumination, and decreased stress. As we know, yoga is a major factor that can decrease anxiety and post-traumatic growth in breast cancer survivors. And this is huge. This has nothing to do with the classroom. This is overall, in general. Teachers and social emotional learning, SEL as it has called. So according to EdSurge, the 5 most mentioned feelings among all teachers were anxious, fearful, worried, overwhelmed, and sad. Anxiety by far was the most frequently mentioned emotion, and I think as educators, we can relate to that on some level. So go ahead and rate these. Have a conversation with your neighbor. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the highest or worst, rank the following feeling as they relate to you as a classroom teacher. So interesting conversations, and again, depending on where you are in your career, can depend on those emotions, because maybe anxiety isn't number 1 because you have had those self-talk conversations in your mind on how to work our way through that, maybe as a 10th year teacher, whereas that conversation is completely different for a first year teacher. And that's very interesting, and it comes down to that positive self-talk, the stories that we tell ourselves. So finally, a note on empathy and resilience. This is a very interesting diagram that I would like to take a look at. You can see the circular pattern. So resilient individual in the middle. Social engagement, opportunities for connectedness, self-awareness and self-care, opportunities for self-reflection, opportunities for self-efficacy and mastery, opportunities for service. You will notice how one leads to the other and overall has a circular effect on our body. When we do one, the other will come. When we do that one, the other will come. So I thought this was a very powerful diagram. And finally, just a reminder that it is okay. It is okay to feel stressed. It is okay to feel overwhelmed. It is okay to feel like you don't know what to do. But if we can remember anything, it's that we can control what we do to our body. We can control the conversations we have in our own mind. Amelia and Emily Nagoski, explain how stress stays in the body until we consciously work it out through these different things. If we do nothing, nothing will happen. If we do something, something will happen. So just to keep in mind, physical activity, breathing, positive social interaction, laughter, affection, crying, creative expression. We can do these things in our own life. We can do these things in our classrooms. When we laugh, when we allow students to be creative, when we build that rapport, when we tell them it's okay to cry, it's okay to have that bad day, it's okay to wonder why things are the way they are in the world, it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to have a bad day. But what will you tell yourself the next time you feel that way? What will you do to your body to help your way through this situation? And if we can keep these things in mind and take care of our bodies and listen to our bodies, that is the first step in working towards stress management. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you were able to gain some more insight regarding stress management.